All right, welcome back. Intro-Web 3223 here at Alfred State College. Now, we're going to be talking about Ajax today. Now, Ajax gives us the ability to request information from a server. Typically, it's your own server trying to get information off of there, and it doesn't require a full page refresh. Now, this will become more clear when you take Web 1 with us. However, because we don't have the access to a server, and I definitely want to get to a point where you guys are using real data to create your software, we need to go over Ajax. Now, primary concepts. You'll go over this a lot more in Web 1, and we'll cover it more at the end of this course in terms of conceptual stuff, but you will actually do it in Web 1. So 2 ways to send and receive data to the server. You can do a page refresh or a full page request, and then you can do it through an Ajax request. So if you are new to the web world, and if you can recall having websites where you go, okay, I'm going to refresh this page, and then you get a little warning that says, hey, this was totally done on a post data. Do you want to resend that information to the server? Yeah, that's a full page refresh. So that's a page request, and that was done on a post, and that's considered bad practice in almost every way because of that problem right there. So as soon as you have to refresh, you have to resend the data that's in the browser for no reason. So that server now and your browser, but the browser has to resend the information, but the server has to reparse the information that it's already done for the same client for the same reason. It just makes no sense. Okay, so generally that's bad practice, but that is the only thing that I can think of right off the top of my head where you've probably been exposed to it and just didn't know what that thing was. You just clicked OK. All right, Ajax solves this problem in almost every way, and Ajax also has the benefit of not having to refresh the page, the entire DOM, if you don't have to, especially if it's an Ajax request for something that's not going on the DOM. This is a fantastic solution for that. Okay, so there are 5 different request types. We're going to be going over 2. Get and post. Those are your common ones. That's what you're going to see most often. You do have others, put, delete, and patch. So these are typically used for your REST APIs. Again, things that we're going to cover in Web 1. And then, once you have Intro to Web in Web 1, you should be a pretty well-rounded web developer at that point. You just need practice. And ideally, that's what should be happening there. With that said, for the people that are curious for what Ajax actually stands for, it is asynchronous JavaScript and XML. And this is where people get confused and start asking, well, what is XML? Because we haven't talked about it yet. And then can it only be XML? And the answer to both of those is XML is a markup language. We're just not going to cover it. And then yes, you can use this technology and this concept with basically any type of data. I'm going to use JSON just because that is the standard at the moment. And there are 2 different API calls through JavaScript you can use for this. You have it's not deprecated yet, it is depreciated, but XML HTTP request. Okay, so that is the older way of doing that. And then fetch, which is the way that I'm going to do it. All right, client-server relationship. Every single website starts with a download, unless it's a progressive web app, but we'll talk about that later. All right, so as a general rule of thumb, and this is pretty obvious, download less if you want a better user experience because it doesn't take as long, right? And like I've said throughout the course here, look, content is king, performance is queen. You need to care about performance. Once you have your content, you need to care about performance. And especially when you start interacting with designers and UX specialists, and especially if the UX specialist came from the graphic designer field, you need to be very aware that they're going to say a thing extraordinarily confidently, and then you're going to have to be able to see through and go, no, 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 no. the thing that you're trying to ask for is going to hurt performance so badly that it really, really doesn't matter. It's just going to hurt the overall experience. Um, so you're going to have to be able to interact with those people in such a way that you can demonstrate that there is a more optimum way of handling that problem. Okay, most websites have CDNs for their libraries. So more precisely, each library package has a CDN. So a CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. So if you're using something like a Bootstrap, you can use a Ajax call or a tag that goes, hey, we want to use Bootstrap, and we're going to go to the internet and download it and then parse it and then use it. And you could probably guess by the way I said that, it's not very performant. It's actually the opposite of performant. It takes a long time actually in computer land. Generally speaking, if you have a library, you really don't want to use a CDN unless you have to. You want to download that from your server. Okay, so CDNs require new connections. Okay. In terms of connection costs, connections hurt performance a lot just because they take a long time to create and then essentially just kill that session. So be very careful with CDNs, and you're going to see a lot of developers out there go, well, this works. It works. It works. And you're going to hear that over and over and over and over and over again, that it works. Who cares? Works. Okay, and these are little things that you can do to optimize. And I'll give you a personal story. When I was working at a company early on in my career, one of the senior developers was like, Magento's actually fast. You just have to use CDNs for everything. And then I immediately said, okay, so you're saying that Magento is fast if you can take these 50 packages, go out to the internet, download them all, parse them all, then render the DOM, and that's faster than Magento? And that's kind of when it dawned on him that Magento is awful. But yeah, don't do that. If you're hosting your own server and you have your own custom software, download the thing to the server and then let your web application take that bundle in as one connection. Much faster. Okay. Server can push content, but it is less common. This is becoming more common as we move into the progressive web app world. Don't worry about it for this class, though. Just be aware that it exists. All right. Page request, Ajax. I put this in here because a lot of people seem to struggle with this concept where they get the idea that, hey, Ajax gets some data, but well, what happens if I want to change pages after that Ajax call? And this is common for, hey, I'm going to log in and then I don't know what user type that is, and I won't know until I get that data back. Okay, and you could redirect on the server, but sometimes it's easier, especially if you're trying to do some error checking, to go Ajax, bring back the data, see if there's any errors. If there was, display the error. If not, go ahead and redirect. So this is how you do that. So you'd use your fetch call, and we'll go with the demonstration here a little bit more thoroughly here in a second. But you would do the Ajax call, you get a response back, and then if everything checks out well, redirect. So that'd be window location.href. All right, that's how you do that. Page request server side. So after, and this is the same demonstration from the picture on the last slide. So on the server, this is what that would look like, assuming they're using Node.js. So it'd be router.route, and this is Node.js with Express, /today. So that's going to be your route that was requested. The .get is the request type. And then we have all the content that we are actually sending back. All right. So here's what this looks like. Play video, play. There you go. So we're going to make a new profile here. We're going to add some new content. All right. All right. I'm going to do this little croppy thing that I made, and it's kind of awful. Okay, more. And then once we hit this create button, okay, we hit this debugger here. And so right before we do this location href, okay, we are going to tell JavaScript to change the page. Okay, so we sent that information to the server. We are rendering, or we're taking that information and making that new profile. After we made the new profile, we are going to go to the home page of that new profile. And right there it is. Okay. So that was a page request using Ajax. You could have used something like a form tag here, and then you'd have to play around with the idea of, at least with Node, waiting for the actual content to be done and then going. You don't want to do that in Node. We'll leave that there. But so XML HTTP request, we're going to go over this just because you're going to see this in legacy code bases. It's really very similar. Okay, so if string equals 0, we're going to get some empty HTML. We're going to return that. Definitely not what I would do, but here we go. Constant HTTP x HTTP request. We have HTTP.onload, so very similar to our window.onload. Okay, we're going to have this function here. Okay, document get element by ID, text hint, enter HTML. Okay, this dot response. So this is part of the reason why I don't like this. So if you guys watch that other video, where is this object coming from? Nobody knows. Okay, so I'm assuming that this is actually the response from the server. Response text. Not great. This is why I don't like using this keyword of this, at least in this context. Okay, so HTTP open get. So here's your request type. Here's your path. Now we haven't went over URL encoding yet, but there's a little taste of it. And then HTTP.send. Okay, so this way is a little bit harder. I don't like this way as much. That's why fetch replaced it. But you will see things like this out in legacy code bases. Fetch, the better one, the one that replaces the thing that we just seen. Okay, so you got all the same options. You have your mode options. You have header content. Okay, so this is the three things that you're really going to need to make sure that fetch works. Okay, so this is what that looks like. So you actually have the fetch function itself, the API call. You have the URL that you're requesting right here. Method post. Okay, so method type on the server. So post or get is going to be your two common ones. Mode of cores. Okay, so basically, if you're doing anything modern, this is going to be mode of cores. Occasionally, if you're accessing a old API, then this would be no cores, but generally speaking, just put cores here until this function yells at you otherwise. Okay, headers, content type, application JSON. Header sets the info for the server to for what to expect. So when the server gets information from your fetch call, it actually needs to know if it's URL encoded or JSON, because it needs to parse it correctly. So you have to tell it what type of information you're sending it. And then the body, the information itself. So JSON.stringify, because we said JSON, we're sending JSON. Okay, stylus and stylus ID. And then the asynchronous function after that. Okay, server side, this is what the server looks like. Not overly important, but this is what it looks like on the other side. All right, and then we're going to watch a little fetch call here. So we're going to go to scheduling, and we're going to make a appointment. Okay. There we go. Right before the fetch call, we're going to go and get the times that are available for men's haircuts. Okay. Okay, we hit the server, so we're going to send back time and time offset. So time offset, if you guys aren't aware, is the time zone. Uh, if we're East Coast, that's what it looks like in milliseconds. I think it's 5 hours from GMT. Okay, we hit our asynchronous function. So the dot then tells us, hey, once we get the response back from the server, this is what we're trying to do. So we're parsing that JSON that we got back from the server, and then we're going to filter times. And then once we filter the times, we're going to append the ones that are available. Okay, so as we scroll down, here's all the times that are available. All right. So this is how you would use fetch in the real world, where you're going, okay, especially with this application right here, I already have my stylus selected. I already have my service selected. I need to know what times are left. Now, there's no point of making a full page request to do that, because every time you want to go, oh, I actually want a child's haircut as well. I'm going to, might as well, me and my son or daughter, we both need haircuts, so might as well just add child haircut. Why would I make a new page request for that? Right? Just Ajax. Ajax solves that problem. All right. So that's going to do it for the presentation portion of this. What we will do is we'll do a relatively simple example of a Ajax request. More than likely, what I'm going to do is a API call from a different server that just doesn't require a key. So like weather or something simple. And then if you're part of the Alfred State taking this physically, we will do a little bit more complex example just to reinforce some of these concepts. So with that said, I will see you in the demonstration portion of this, and hopefully it helps your understanding. So later. All right, welcome back. We're going to be going over the Ajax demonstration here today, and we're going to keep it relatively simple in terms of which API that we're going to end up using here. However, I do need you to download the little template that we have going on here. If you're on YouTube, take a minute to record all this and type it out. Okay, let's open this up so you can actually see it. So here's one. Don't have anything in the CSS, not yet at least. And then the JavaScript itself. Okay. And I'm going to show you how to get this portion right here in a second. Okay. So, for the people online, there's the full JavaScript. All right. So with that said, let's go over to the API we're going to use, which is weather.gov, which is this right here. Okay, so you're going to end up landing on this page right here. All right, so we typically go through the main page here. When you're doing any API work, you need to figure out how they're actually doing it, because it's their server. You have to play by their rules to get information. Now, fortunately, this one is on the simple side for APIs. So there's no key, there's no user agent, there's nothing. You just request a little bit of data and you'll get something back. Now, one of the things, typically speaking, we can go to the example and figure it out, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to hit this examples tab here. And then here is where you have to kind of figure out what's going on. So hopefully, how do I get forecast? Okay. Uh, we got this URL right here. Okay. So it up to this point, you just copy and paste, and then you have to figure out the office, grid, coordinate X, and then grid Y. Okay, so these three things, which I showed you a few seconds ago in the code that I already had for if you're an Alfred State student, which office you're going to be going out of, uh, how to find this. So, and then they have their little example here, API weather.gov / grid points. And they got top here. I have no idea what city this is. Okay, so top, and then some sort of position of 31 by 80. Okay, and then forecast. Okay, now they also tell you down here, if you don't know your grid coordinate or your grid that correlates to your location, you can use the / point endpoint to retrieve the exact grid endpoint by coordinates. Okay, so you could use this URL plus latitude and longitude to figure out which office you should be going out of. And I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a second, but we got to get this last little bit out of here. And then how do you get alerts? Well, you'd use this URL, and this is asking for URL encoding, which we haven't covered yet. Actually, we haven't covered either type. So there's two types. There's URL encoded, which is like this. You actually pass in your parameters through the URL, or you use something like JSON, which we're going to use to pass your data to the server. All right. So with that said, let's actually jump into the code now. So let's spend a little bit more time on the HTML. Okay, so we got our doc type like we always do. We have our HTML tag like we always do. We have our head tag like we always do. Okay, we do have our CSS linked here. Our body, I'm using H1. And then button, I have an ID of weather. Okay, that's going to be important here in a second. And then I have a weather container, and it's going to be empty. And the reason why it's empty is because this content will be filled with JavaScript. Like so. Okay, so I'm going to put that comment in there so whenever someone looks at this and they're wondering why there's a blank div, well, this content will be filled with JavaScript. Okay. And then footer, that script tag to actually include the JavaScript that we're going to end up using. And now we can actually look at the JavaScript. So if you remember from before, we don't have anything in the CSS, so you can move on to this. Okay. So just like before, we have window on load. We're going to set our listeners. All right. Weather button, document dot. So if you remember from before, document is the auto-generated variable from JavaScript that has all the DOM nodes in it, and then you have to go through and find the one that you actually need for the object. So document get element by ID weather. Okay, so that's going to give us this. So that's going to give us our button. So appropriately named weather button. All right, and then I have two of these things commented out. So for the time being, I'm going to uncomment both, but that's going to give us a problem. So I'm going to have to oscillate between the two when we're trying to accomplish this. All right. So weather button dot add event listener, click get weather. So this is a function, and you can tell that because it's, well, one of the parameters that is a requirement for add event listener, but it's also yellow if you're using Visual Code. So this is yellow, this is yellow, this is yellow, this is yellow. So this color of yellow means function. So let's go ahead and find get weather, which just so happens to be this. All right. And then we have our grid points, Buffalo /75, comma 21. Now, the problem is if you live in a different location than Alfred, New York, this answer, this little bit right here, might be different. Okay. So, if that might be different, which easily could be, all right, we actually have to find out where you are. So, first thing that we're going to do is comment this out. And then we're going to run this get Latin long. Okay. Actually, that doesn't really make sense here, does it? Let's go ahead and call this get uh, get API location. Okay, and we can change that. And is there a reason why I'm passing in nothing? Does not seem to be. So I'm going to fix this real quick because we are being just a little bit inefficient. Okay. Get API location. Here we go. So navigator. All right. Yeah, we're doing pretty good here. So where'd this navigator come from? Okay. Well, one of the things you need to start getting used to when you're using JavaScript is going, I need this thing. And it's very abstracted and it's just especially something like location data that other people are going to use on a regular basis, you need to start getting used to, does it already exist? Getting used to asking that question. Does it already exist? And what you would do is come over to Google and go JavaScript. Okay. Latin long, like this. Look at this. Geolocation coordinates dot longitude. Okay. Now I'm going to click on this first one, assuming that you guys don't know what this is. Okay. So geolocation coordinates is a read-only longitude property, blah, blah. So we need to go up one. Let's click on this. This is going to give us geolocation coordinates. All right. So geolocation coordinates interface represents the position and altitude of the device on Earth, as well as the accuracy with which these properties are calculated. Okay. So we're in the right ballpark here. So we have geocoordinates dot latitude, read only. Okay. Geocoordinates dot longitude. Okay. Methods. Geolocate coordinates interface neither implements nor inherits any method. Okay, that's fine. And then we also have browser compatibility down here, which tells you which browsers support this, which is everything that matters. Okay. No, here's no. Security context required. What's this no under? Web view, Android. Yeah, no one cares. Okay, so let's go ahead and re-click on this latitude. I think we're on longitude before, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so one of the things that tripped me up when I was getting ready for this is geolocation coordinates latitude is a read-only property. Okay, cool. So if that's the case, I should be able to copy this, go back to my JavaScript, and get something out of it. So I'm going to console log, and then I'm going to add geocoordinates.latitude, and then I'm going to put a debugger here. All right, so I'm going to go through my JavaScript to make sure that it's there. It is console log geolocation.latitude, and then the debugger. So I'm going to click get weather. All right, so now that we're on our debugger here, notice that I got undefined back. Okay, so this happens on occasion where you can get something out of the docs and it doesn't necessarily do what it said it was going to do. Uh, JavaScript as a language is quite large, and maintaining the entire code base or the entire document is really hard to do, especially when MDN or W3C is not actually the entity that controls JavaScript. Okay, so this took me a couple seconds to figure out, and it was a little confusing, which is okay because it gives me an opportunity to show you guys that these things happen on occasion and you're just there to solve the problem. Okay, so this didn't work. That's fine. I'm going to come down to W3C, and this is where I found this bit right here. Okay, this is where I found that. Now, Navigator is a variable created by the browser, yet again, like document. It has a property of geolocation, and then that geolocation property has a function called get current position. Okay, so this is what we're going to use to find our coordinates. So if we come over here, well, one, we can get rid of this. So navigator, geolocation, get current position, and then we have this craziness right here. So let's go back to the docs real quick. Now notice they have show position here. We don't have the same coloring, but if I come down to show position, happens to be a function. Okay. Now I need to go over where is it? Okay, it might not have been this one. Okay, geolocation API. Let's go ahead and Google this. In one of the docs, it told me what. This one. This is the one that told me how this actually works. Okay, so now that we have the right documentation up, where it is actually telling me the how this thing is actually working. So we have geolocation, we have get current position, method to use to get current position of the device. Okay, that's good. So here's the syntax. Get current position. If it works, we're going to run this callback function. So if we come down here to parameters, success, a callback function takes a geolocation position object as its sole input parameter. Okay? So this is a callback function. Our second parameter can be an error, which is optional, which you're told that here. Options include the following parameters: maximum age, timeout, enable high accuracy. We don't need any of that for this. Okay, so we're gonna roll with success for now. We just need the callback function. If it doesn't work, we'll handle it from there. Okay, so let's go back to our code, and this is where I'm going to have a little bit of a rant. So there's a bunch of reasons why people don't like JavaScript. This is one of them. All right, I'm going to pass in a callback function. Okay, I am defining a function at the state of where I am creating a function. Not only do I not really know what scope this is, I have no idea what is inside get current position. The other thing I need to be worried about is, okay, I got location here. I am creating location inside of my callback function. And yes, I'm getting something back from get current position, but that's not inherently clear. And I used inherently with purpose because you are inheriting this, right? So whatever this is, you can call this anything that you want. I use location because it makes sense, but this is really, really unclear in terms of how JavaScript handles this problem. And it's not you, it's not a you problem that you're confused, because I'm still confused and I've been doing this for a while. I've just gotten used to going, okay, whatever, JavaScript magic. Okay, so that's what's happening here. You have access to a variable that's getting uh, sent to this function, this callback function, and then you can name it whatever you want. But at this point, we need to get to the endpoint of this API call so we can actually get our coordinates. Okay, so let's open this up just a little bit more. So navigator, geolocation, get current position. So we've been working on that. We just went through the docs. Our callback function. Okay. Fetch. Now fetch is a Ajax call. I could use the other flavor of this. I'm not going to. So I'm going to use a fetch call. https://api.weather.gov/points. So if you remember from before, I got that URL from the API docs itself, which just so happens to be this. Okay. https://api.weather.gov/points/ latitude and longitude. Okay, so this is the part where you have to add in this content to this URL endpoint, and it's going to give you back something. Okay, one thing I do have to call out here, these curly brackets are there for telling you that these are variables. You don't actually have to have those curly brackets. Okay, so if I come over here, I have a $sign curly bracket, and don't be confused on this one. This is because of the template string and not because of what the API told you to do. This is a template string syntax. So right here, location.chords.latitude. Now, we haven't really went over where chords came from. So if we come back over here and come down to example, right here, on success, position right there, chords. So whatever you're getting back from this function, which is get current position, it has a property of chords. So again, if this wasn't clear at this point, reading the docs is how you're going to solve these problems. You have to be able to read the docs. Okay. And then down here, we're resetting our variable to CRD. I don't know what they're having that short for, but then we're going to use CRD for latitude. Now, I didn't do this step, so I used position. Mine is called location.chords.latitude. So if I go back to the location or the code here, location chords.latitude, location chords.longitude, and this is going to be a proper URL for this endpoint, and then we're going to get something back. Okay. So with that, I'm going to put a debugger down here. And as a review, fetch is asynchronous. So when you have this .then on a asynchronous function, you're going to send out this request. The event loop is going to continue to run until we get a response back from the server, and then we can actually do something with it. We don't want the event loop because, again, JavaScript is single threaded to be blocked. Okay, so if we come down here, I'm going to put this debugger here. All right, I'm going to come back to my code. I'm going to hit get weather. I'm going to allow access to my location, because how else is it going to find out where this should be? Okay, notice that took a hitch. That was a little bit of a gag. That went out to the server, got the information, came back, and now we're finally on the debugger. We don't want the main thread to have a hitch like that. That's not good for the user experience. Okay, so back here we have object. Actually, we should back up a little bit. So I never explained why I'm using JSON here. There's that. We're going to refresh, get weather, allow. We're going to hit this first debugger here. Now we have server data, which is this. We got body readable stream, false, header, true. Okay, redirect, status 200, status okay, type, URL, prototype. Okay, JSON. Okay, so at this point, how do we know what type of data that we actually got back? Did we get a stream? Did we get JSON? What did we get back from this server? And the answer is they didn't tell us. Okay, so if I come up here, forecast is divided, blah, 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 blah. If you don't know how to get the coordinates, and that's kind of where it stops. All right, update, specification. Let's go over to specs. See if it's over here. Okay, grid, endpoints, forecast. Okay, return the textual forecast for a 2.5 km grid area. All right, then we came down here, array, unit, string, WFO, string, integer. Integer is not actually telling us, oh, right here. So we're getting JSON back. Now, the way I solved this was I just opened it up in the browser and like, oh, I got JSON back, so I can fix this. But again, the doc should tell you what type of object that you're going to get back. So to do that, if you are getting JSON data back from the server, you have to parse that JSON into a usable object. Okay, so that'd be, we're defining server data here. Again, JavaScript magic. Server data.json, which happens to be a function. The other thing this happens to be is asynchronous. Now, because we don't have the tool set right now to do a web worker, we have to put a wait here, and it's going to block the main thread, which isn't great, but again, we don't have the tool set to get around this problem. So async, I guess we could put a dot then on this. Let's try it. Dot then. This would be data. Actually, this would be a callback function. Data, and then I'm going to have to throw this in here. Okay, let's see if that works. Allow. Hey, that works. Okay, cool. We got around that problem. So there's that. We got data. Notice that this is a JSON property or a JSON object now. So we have context, we have geometry, we have properties. We have properties, and then we have a type of feature. Okay. And now notice. Okay. We are looking, because we're trying to get that API information. We are looking for, well, this and this. That's definitely a thing. Actually, no, that's what we sent to the server. We are looking for that Buffalo URL. So where is it? Where did it go? So let's open this up down here. And this is part of the reason why I like using countlog and debugger. So if I hovered over this and I just opened up geometry or properties, sometimes it's finicky and doesn't want to work. So I did console log this, which is helpful. Okay, so I opened up object. Okay, context. Properties. Okay, this gets us closer. There it is, right there, forecast. Okay, so let's walk through that process again. And when you're using someone else's work, sometimes it's just go through what you got back from the server and try to figure out what's going on. All right. So we got our JSON object back. Okay. We're going to come down to the properties. Well, first I checked both of these and it wasn't in there. We're looking for something that has the location of where we're currently at, and it actually makes sense. So if we come down to properties, @sign ID, not it, because that's what we sent to the server. Country, we don't want New York City 003. Okay, so this gives us a zone, but this is a very, very big zone. This isn't going to be very good for the actual weather of Alfred, New York. Okay, fire weather zone. Okay, not what we're looking for. We do have forecasts. Hey, that kind of looks right. Okay, so we have HTTPS API.weather.gov grid points Buffalo /75, comma 21. Now, if I come back to the API documentation and I go back to example, hey, look at this. HTTPS API.weather.gov /grid points office, which this would be Buffalo, grid X, which would be that I think it was 75, and then grid Y of 21. So we officially have our URI or URL to get the forecast. Okay. So this is where, oh, let's go back to the browser. This is where I would click on this link and it's going to open up the API endpoint at for Buffalo 75, comma 21 in forecast. So this is what we're going to get back from the server. But the reason why I opened this up is because I wanted this URL. I'm going to copy this. Copy. Okay. All right. Take a little quick note of what we're going to get back. Okay. Unexpected problem occurred. That's fine. We just want that URL. And then I'm going to come down here to HTTPS. Actually, what I'll do is I'll put this here for now. Put that there for now. I'll come back to the API. I'll actually copy this, right? Just to show you guys that, hey, this is how I actually did it before starting this little video. There we go. Now I got to replace office and grid with this. Copy. Like so. All right, let's get rid of that because that will get angry. All right. Okay, so that's how I found the Buffalo /7521. All right. The next thing that we need to do is actually run this get weather function. And we officially don't need this get API location anymore. Now, if you wanted to do this dynamically, then you would have to run both of these functions. And then it would be, okay, .then, and then instead of this debugger here, you would run get weather and pass in this. Right, so you'd have to use regex, which I don't want to cover regex, to get this out of there and then put it into the URI string, which that is outside the scope of this course, something I didn't want to do. So we are going to cheat a bit and do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to uncomment this. We have get weather, we have our proper URI. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is go down here. I'm going to set a debugger here just to make sure that we're getting the correct content back from the server. Okay. Bang, bang, bang. API location. That is correct. That's correct. And I have my debugger in there. Awesome. Okay, let's go. We had that debugger. What did we get back from the server? So I'm going to highlight this real quick. A unexpected problem occurred. Interesting, interesting. Okay, so we are down here with 500 error, internal server error. That is officially not us. Okay, so unfortunately, we don't have real data to work with. So what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to create my own JSON here, which that kind of sucks. But hey, got to do what you got to do, I guess. Okay. So with that said, let's go ahead and make our little JSON data. So data, and here we go. And we are going to pretend here. Let's do something like this. Oh, not what I want. I want a square brackets. Square bracket. Okay. And then we're going to add another curly brace here. Don't worry about the JSON format too much. I know I haven't covered it, but I'm kind of in a bind here. So I'm going to have to make my own data. So we're going to start with a day. And then we're going to say Monday. We're going to go temp here. And this is going to be, I don't know, let's go with 80. All right. And then, actually, let's call this temp high, temp low. Say it's 50. I'm missing my comma. All right. And then the next thing that we're going to do, well, one, I'm going to put a comma here, but two, I'm going to copy this. Copy this, copy this. This is going to give us 4 days. So let's change this to Tuesday. And then Thursday. Okay, I'm not going to change the temperature because this is probably going to be fine. I got some red squigglies. Expected a colon. Why? Why did you expect a colon? All right, well, I guess this is as good a time as any to show you one of the cooler tools with JSON. So if we come back over here to the web, format, JSON format check. And so you can come on here for the linter and do something like this. Error, parsed on one, Monday, expecting a string, got a square bracket. Okay, do I have an extra curly brace for no reason? Is that what's happening here? Okay, square bracket, curly brace, a day, Monday, expecting a string, and got a curly brace. Interesting. I'm pretty sure this is right. W3C, JSON. Okay, curly brace, string. Is that what they're mad about? Is I don't have a string for an ID? No, right here's an example of that. And to be clear, guys, this happens on occasion where you go, well, I thought this was right. Let's go make sure that I am right. Okay, this is an array literal inside of the JSON. I do not want that. It's not what I'm looking for. No, no, no. Interesting. Okay, so if I wonder if it's just angry that I haven't done this for my little validation. Validate. Expecting string got undefined on Monday. Okay. Okay, it's still blowing up on this one. This JSON validator seems to be better. So let's go ahead and get rid of those curly braces. Info. Insert missing quotes. Okay, they want quotes around that, and then they also want... Okay, I can handle that. Let's go back over here. Array. All right. There's that. Nope. On all of them. Hey, not cool. All right. So there's that. Gonna add a semicolon down there. Okay, now that we have our data, so we would get something similar like this back from the server if it didn't have a server error. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is, well, one, yeah, let's go ahead and show you this. So data.properties.periods. Let's go back to this. We're gonna go to the specs. Okay, blah, 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 blah. We were on this one. So if I go through this is what we should have gotten back from the server. The data would be different. The structure would be the same. Okay, so if we come down here, blah, 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 blah. Okay, right, there's periods. Okay, so if we go up one, properties, periods, this is going to give us a number. However, we would end up needing name, really don't care about start time, end date, is daytime, and temperature trend. We could probably use that. Wind direction, probably use that. Short forecast, we could probably use that. Detailed forecast, also could probably use that. So this is where you would actually get your information from the API. It just decided not to work when I was recording this video. That kind of sucks. Anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to pass in data. Actually, what we'll do is I'll make a copy of this, and then the original one I'll keep just for reference for you guys, and then I will make data, right? And then I'm going to convert that into weather because weather makes sense to me. All right. Okay, so now at this point, we need to append that information to the DOM, and we're going to put it into the container that just so happened to be empty. Okay, so just as a refresher, because I forgot to, we are addressing an ID of weather container, so we need to get that off of the DOM. So the first thing that we're going to do is weather container equals document get element by ID. Okay, so this is going to give us our weather container. Now we are not going to use it yet. Okay, this is where we have to have our conversation about being efficient with our DOM renders, because every time that you append something to the DOM, it has to re-render, and we want to do that once. Okay, so this is how we're going to do that. We need to append our data to memory first. Okay, so we have our weather container, and then what we're going to do is let's make a row here. Now, up to this point, I haven't really done anything with Bootstrap, so we will do this in Grid. All right, so first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to call this, let's go with row document dot create element. We're going to call this a div. Okay, row needs some properties to it. Okay, first of which is going to be set attribute. Oh, I should probably show you guys how to get that. Okay, JavaScript set attribute. Hey, there you go. JavaScript set attribute. So this is the actual documentation for this. Now, if you didn't know, I'm going to close the rest of these, by the way, because we don't need them anymore. So if you didn't know how to do this, you go JavaScript set class, something like this. How do I change elements with it? Avoid Stack Overflow. You're going to get bad stuff in there. Okay, so you got HTML DOM element class name property. That could work. I don't like using that necessarily. So I'll show you guys what that is. You can come over here, element.className, and then you can add a class to it. The problem with this is going to overwrite the other class, or this will add a class to it, but set attribute is a little bit more universal. That's why I like using set attribute. Okay, so yeah, you could do it like this, and that's fine. Wow, that didn't come up at all. Anyways, I am confident in this one. So element.setAttribute sets the value of an attribute on a specific element. Yes, I can't say that word correctly. If the attribute already exists, the value is updated. Otherwise, a new attribute is added with the new name and value. Okay, set attribute, parameters, value, return, exceptions. Examples, we have button hello world, button document query selector, button set attribute name, and then hello button, and then set attribute of disabled and empty string. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't give us what we're looking for class, but as it turns out, occasionally you're going to have to guess at these and go, can I do this? And then let the language tell you if you can or can't do something. Okay, so class, and then we are going to go, let's go row. Yeah, let's go row here. Okay. And now we have, I'm pretty sure we're good here. So we have a little container for our CSS grid. However, we need to come over and actually make that class a row now for in our CSS. And then we're going to go display grid Oh, yeah, how do we want to do this? Template, column template. Grid template columns, of course. Okay, grid template columns. Let's go with 12. Yeah, let's go with 12. Okay, so there's that grid template column. This is going to repeat like so. And then I want one FR as a review, that is one fractional unit. Grid template row, we're going to set to auto. So when we run out of space, we're going to have a new row. Okay, so doing pretty good here. Now, one of the challenges that we are going to have basically immediately is this, and I think I'm going to solve it right now. We're going to go row from the class of row, and then we're going to step into a div. Actually, no, let's add a class here. Row, and then we're going to go grid child, like so. And then each grid child is going to, I think it was column span. Yep, column span, heck yeah. Can I just do span and then CSS grid will figure it out for me? Grid column. Okay. Can I just do span? All right, so again, like I said a couple minutes ago, can I just do a span and then this will figure it out? Let's find out. Span. I'm going to go 4 here. So that would give us 3 weather events on one row. And I'm going to save here. Okay. I'm going to come back over here. And now what we are going to do is we need some sort of way to make this dynamic because we don't know how many elements that we're going to get back from the server. So when we have something like this, we are officially in the ballpark of loops, something that we have to do over and over and over again. We have to use a loop. Okay. Let's go ahead and yeah, let's do this. Let I equals 0. Okay. While I, oh, wrong I. There we go. While I is less than the length of weather, and I generally do my increment before I actually start the logic because I forget this all the time. Here we go, while loop. Okay, so weather. This is where we're going to have to start creating objects inside of a loop. So we need, let's go with row child, document, create element, and this is going to be a div. We're going to do something very similar with row and set attribute of class And what did we name it? It was grid child. Let's make this row child. No, grid child. And then let's replace this with grid. That makes more sense. So part of the reason why I waffle and stress over naming so much is because when other developers look at this, if you don't get your naming right, it gets really confusing really fast, especially when you have to hold a bunch of things in your head to solve a problem. We also need to fix this grid, grid, grid. Okay. Grid child. Okay. This makes much more sense. Okay, so we got grid child, document, create element, div, grid child, set attribute. Okay, so our attribute is now set on our grid child. We need to make another div. And this div is going to represent our day name, I believe I called it. So let's open this up and see what we did. Day and then Monday. Okay, so let's call this day. And then we are going to document, create element. Still going to use a div here. Okay, day dot, and this is where it's going to be a little bit different. Actually, no, we'll do set attribute again. Set attribute. Let's go class here. We're going to have a day. All right. This is where it's going to be a little bit different. Now we actually need to add content to this div. So what I'm going to do is inner text. And then this inner text, we're going to add a string. It just so happens to be a JSON object though. So we're going to use a little template string here. We're going to open that up so we can actually use the JavaScript attribute or JavaScript variable. Okay. And then it's going to be weather square brackets I dot day. Okay. The next thing that we need to do here is to append our day content to grid child. Okay, so this is going to be grid child dot append day. Okay, we got one. Now, to save ourselves a little bit of time, I'm going to copy this 2 more times. All right, so if I come up here, we need temperature high and temperature low. And the only thing I'm going to do is change that temp high. Okay, there's one. And I missed that. Okay. Temperature high, temperature low. Hallelujah. We got our little loop going. All right. I think it's time to actually see if this bad boy works. Okay, so we're going to save that. I'm going to append weather. Okay. Let's see if I actually got this. All right, let's come over here. Let's go back to our browser. Let's go ahead and click weather and see what happens. Okay, we got nothing. Pull up task manager, see if I have a open loop. So if you have a endless loop, one of your threads would get crushed here. I got nothing. Oh, that's right, because we never appended it. My fault. Okay, so up to this point, we have our loop. We are appending grid child, but we never actually appended grid child to grid, and then we never appended grid to weather container. So grid child, oh, grid, append, append. Just have append here. Why didn't you guys catch that? Append child. Okay, grid, append child. And then this is going to be grid child. Okay. And then after this loop is done, we're going to append grid container or weather container with that grid. Append child grid. Okay, so let's go over that logic a little bit better. Okay, so we have a weather container. This is actually when we're going to append something to the DOM. Grid, because we made it here in JavaScript and we haven't appended it yet, this is still in memory. This is a good thing because now we can append as much as we want to memory and we don't have to re-render the DOM. Okay. This loop is getting all the information out of that JSON that we made up here. All right. So if we come down here, grid child, document.create element, div. So we're making a new container for our individual day for weather. All right. And then we got a day div here, day.set attribute. Okay. So this is getting the information out of that weather, that JSON data that we made. And this is the attributes that we have to set for it to make sure that we can actually address it appropriately. And then this is the container for day. And then we had the same logic for temperature high and temperature low. Also notice that I'm appending day to grid child, which is still in memory. Okay. And then at the end of the loop, I'm appending grid child to grid. And then after the loop is over, I'm appending grid to weather container. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to come back to our DOM, a little project here, and I'm noticing this, so we're good to go. I'm going to click weather here, and we have Monday, 80, 50, Tuesday, 80, 50, Wednesday, 80, 50, Thursday, 80, 50. So this is all of our information. We had to pretend a little bit for this actual data here, but this is a significantly better example than what we did last time for appending to the DOM, because more than likely it's going to look something like this. We're going to have some sort of a loop. That loop is going to create an object. You're going to append those objects to a temporary container, and then you're going to append that temporary container to the DOM. That is generally the pattern that you have here because we only had to render this once. All right. Now, for the sake of... Oh, I'm also noticing that I don't think this worked. Grid child. Nope. I'm getting an invalid property here, which that's sad. Okay, so if I know I want this as a... No, that's not going to work. I'm going to have to do something I don't like. Okay, so occasionally you run into problems like this where you want something to be dynamic and you want it to be appended appropriately, and you just don't have the CSS tools to handle that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these CSS properties in JavaScript, and then I'm going to use some logic to make sure that it does what I want it to do. Okay, so we still need grid child here. Grid child Style. Okay. Let's go back to CSS because I forgot what this was. Column span. I'm going to copy this because I'm going to need it. Oh, wrong thing. I'm going to go to column span, style. So this is going to be most of the JavaScript styles are in camel case. And then I'm going to need a template string here. And this is where we're going to have a bit of a problem. So if I increment my I by 1, then yeah, how am I going to do this? Okay, so I'm going to make an array up here. And to be clear, I tried to leave these in here to show students that it does take a hot second of thinking of how to solve these problems. And I might as well go on this rant again, even though I have already. Look, if you're a developer, your job is to solve problems. You solve problems by abstracting reality into, well, abstractions. So whatever is a proxy, whatever can represent reality, that's how you're going to represent this thing in code. So I need the span grid to adjust based on how many grid childs that we have. And I'm going to have to do that through code. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create an array here. Okay, so I definitely want this to be a span of 4, span of 8. Okay, I think I got this wrong. Okay, so those are the 4 options. Let's go start. Oh, damn it. Okay, start array. And there's probably a better way to handle this problem. Okay, so if this is how we're going to handle this. So if I don't like this at all. Let's make a new function for this. We're going to call this set span. We're going to pass in current. Let's go count. Let's go current count here. I'm going to cut this. Cut. Come down here. There we go. Okay, current count. Oh, we need to actually call that. Set span. We're going to pass in I. All right, we're going to come down here. This is going to be the value of I. We're going to have to increment. Okay, so the problem that we're going to get is that we're going to start at 0. Do I just use an if statement and map this? I don't like that at all. I think I'm just going to use a +5. But no, that's not going to work because as soon as I go over, okay. Yeah, how am I going to do this? Unless I just keep my own counter. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. If span, no, that's got to be down here. That also means I don't need this. If span counter does not equal 4, three, we're going to go span counter plus plus, and then else span counter equals 0. Okay, so what's happening here is that this set span, we're going to have this little span counter here. Ooh, we really don't want to set it to 0 here. Okay. How do I want to handle that? We also don't want to recreate these every time. Cut. Okay. There's that. I'm going to have to pass all these in, which really sucks. Span counter, span array, start array. Okay. So if this is the case, what we can do here is return. I can't do that either. God damn it. Span array, span counter, start array. Okay, I'm reasonably certain this is going to work. I'm going to have to test it, but okay, so we're going to set our span counter to 0. Our span array, which is going to represent how far we want our grid elements to span, and then our start array, where we want those grid elements to start. So because we want a essentially just 3, but a 3 column or a 4 column span, and then we want 3 items on each row, this is how we get to this. So we'd need to start on column 1, and then we'd have to span to column 4 to get that effect, and then plus 4, plus 4, plus 4, plus 4. So those are relatively simple. Then down here, what ends up happening is that if you go over one row, there is no starting point of like 15. So we need some way of setting this back to 0, and this is exactly what's happening. So because we're starting our span counter at 0, we could do 1, but we'll do 0. Actually, we'll do 1 because it's separated. We can do that. 1, not a big deal. Then we have to add 1 here. Actually, no, we can't because the array. If it wasn't clear, guys, this is kind of what ends up happening when you're doing actual coding. Okay, span counter, span array, start array, span counter. Okay, 3. So what ends up happening here is that we're going to check if span counter does not equal 3. See, you keep finding logic errors. This happens all the time, guys. Don't when you're making your code, don't get frustrated on these. This happens a lot. Okay, so span counter, span array, and then start array. If span counter equals 3, so when I'm passing in this variable, does it equal 3? Okay, if it does, I still want span counter from out of span array and start array. We still want those values, but we don't want to go over the length of the array because we only have 3 elements in there. Okay, which also means this has to be 2, 0, 1, and 2. Okay, and then span array, span counter, start array, start counter. If anything else, if this doesn't equal 2, so that would be a 0 or a 1, then we want those positions out of that array. And this is how you get a dynamic appending. Okay, so now to bring it all together, why we went down that mystical place is we're going to do this. Okay, which again, this is not what I was hoping for this little demonstration, but it has gotten out of hand. That is okay though. Okay, so set span, let's, oh, yeah, we need to, I can make this a little simpler. Okay, so we're gonna set our values here, and then we can do our counter, because now we're not dependent on that counter anymore, and then we are going to return as a JSON object, span, and start. So that got out of hand. That's okay. Oh, what do we want to call this? Span and start? No, let's call it column span. Why not? Okay. Right. Column span dot start, and then over here column span dot span. Okay, let's see what we got. I'm relatively certain that I made a mistake, like the 4,000 times before it. Okay, no change at least. Let's come up to this. How dare they? Okay, so this isn't getting applied. Okay, grid child, style, column span. So we're gonna go to the docs, JavaScript, style. Did I spell style correctly? Yes. Column span. And I got span wrong. Okay, that didn't change. And I'm giving it a string. Start, span, span. Are these not coming back as what I expect? Okay. What is this? A 4? A 1? This is a span. What's the problem here? Ooh. Oh, right. Interesting. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Okay, so just to keep you guys in the loop here, I have a logic error that I am tracking down. So what we're going to do here, and what's happening is that column start and column span is coming back as 1 and 4 regardless of the loop and regardless of the state. So we have a logic problem somewhere. Okay, so we are going to start with that, we're going to pass in 0. So these should work. Okay. I'm going to go back to my document here. I'm going to create weather. Okay, span counter 0, 0. That makes sense. So I should come down here and span counter should be a 1. So I'm going to continue. That's going to come up here. And now, since we're here, span counter should be 1. And it's not. So, I mean, I could cheat here and put this function inside of that scope. I really don't want to do that. Bad practice. Bad practice. So why can't I? I mean, this should run. Let's go up here. That should run. And it is running. Step, step, span counter of 1. Continue. Continue. Okay. So this is jumping out to me as a scope problem. So I'm passing in span counter. Span counter seems to be getting reset. So I wonder if I can just change this to no, can't do that. Hmm. Okay, so I'm going to do something I really don't want to do, but I'm going to have to. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to come up here, and I am going to put that little logic that probably should have been in a function right here. Okay. And then I don't really have to worry about, oh, I'm going to put it down here. Then I don't have to worry about scoping, which doing it this way gets messy really fast. I don't like this at all, but I don't have, I gotta wrap this video up. So with that, let's go back to the browser, get weather, reference error set span is not defined. Yeah, we can get rid of that. Column span is not defined. No, it's not. Okay. Start array. Span counter. And then span array. Span counter. Well, we got our content back. It's not in the flavor that I was hoping for. Okay, we're not getting anything on grid child, so I don't know why this is not working. It should work. There's no reason why it shouldn't. Right? Div Let's go back to the doc, see if I missed anything. Document get element by ID, my div style column span all. One all initial inherit. I wonder if I just take span away like this. Not quite. All right. Well, with that said, I mean, I got to the point that I wanted to for the video itself. We got content on the DOM. I just wanted this in a little bit neater of a format. I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time on this to see what the hell's going on, because the docs say I'm not doing anything wrong. So this happens occasionally. This is why people don't like JavaScript. I don't know what to tell you. It takes a minute to get through some of these things. So with that said, I apologize for the long demonstration, but hopefully it was helpful. So cool, awesome. The last thing that we got to go over for this course and this curriculum, for the online portion at least, the Alfred State students are going to get more exposure to things like web workers and Shadow DOM and other more advanced features like that. But we're not grading on any of this. So yeah, that's all I got for this one. The next one that's coming up is error checking. It's a hard one to understand, but got to cover it. We got to try. Okay. So with that said, I'll see you in the next one.